Good morning. My name is Jim Walker. I'm the chairman of the Greater Boise Auditorium District. I'll try and speak loud because I don't want the sound of progress to impede us. But I'd like to thank you for joining us this morning to celebrate the news we received a little over 24 hours ago. With us today are representatives from the City of Boise, the Capital City Development Corporation, and other local agencies and organizations that supported our successful appeal. On behalf of my fellow board members of the Greater Boise Auditorium District, I'd like to give a huge shout out to the justices of the Idaho Supreme Court. We love those guys. Seriously, we're very gratified with the decision that was handed down yesterday, confirming what we believed when we first began this process in June of 2014, when we initially filed our petition for judicial validation. Together with our seasoned legal team and our partners at the City of Boise and CCDC, we formulated a plan for accelerating our Boise Center expansion and completing the different phases of the project more quickly and more efficiently. It's a model for intergovernment collaboration in this city. Mayor Beater and the City Council, John Brunell and the members of the CCDC board, we thank you for your partnership. By entering into a lease agreement with CCDC, making year-to-year lease payments on the Boise Center building, which you see going up here, we call that Boise Center East, right?
Yeah.
We're sticking with right now, and leaving a future board with the option to purchase the building for a nominal price. We felt strongly that we're not incurring a long-term liability, nor were we violating any provision of the Idaho State Constitution. We developed a plan that was constitutional and fiscally responsible. In fact, we felt so strongly about what we were doing that when we faced legal challenges and some initial roadblocks, we decided as a board that we would continue to press the issue and play it out to its logical conclusion, even if that meant going all the way to the Supreme Court. Our case was argued and won on an important principle, and one that impacts many jurisdictions and local governments across this state. Of course, knowing that we were right, but we could lose in court, we also had to have a plan B. We had the cash on hand to build phase one, lease some additional space, but then we were going to have to wait for phase two, which is the connecting concourse and the remodel of our existing structure. That would have worked fine, but it's even better knowing that the expansion will be completed 2 to 3 years earlier, meaning that we'll be able to start attracting larger conventions in 2016. We'll be able to host more events simultaneously for our local clients, and that means the larger economic impact will come earlier. It's a true win-win for Boise Center guests and our community. This board has remained resolute and unified in standing up for something that represents a significant economic boost to this community. For this, I am grateful, and I'm proud to be part of this group. I sincerely thank my fellow board members, Peter Oliver, Hy Clock, Judy P.V. Durr, and Steve Birch, together with Pat Rice and his entire team, and our legal team. You'll hear from Chris Meyer, Nick Miller, and Ryan Armbruster in a moment, but I also would like to thank Pat Miller, Kimberly Mahoney, and Don Nickram for all their work over the past few years. Can we give them a round of applause? First, I'd like to introduce Chris Meyer from Givens Pursley. Just to give you a little history, one of the reasons we were so resolute is because I asked Chris early on to handicap our chances in Supreme Court, and he gave me a solid 70. He didn't bat an eye, so that helped us be resolute. But Chris?
Yesterday, the Idaho Supreme Court upheld the financing of the expansion of the Boise Center as constitutional. I had the honor of presenting the oral argument on behalf of the Greater Boise Auditorium District. We had a simple story to tell. Idaho is probably the most cautious and conservative state in the nation when it comes to ensuring that local governments do not foolishly take on long-term debt without the consent of taxpayers. The Auditorium District entered into financing agreements that complied with that very strict rule. Since its adoption in 1890, our Constitution has prohibited local governments from taking on any debt or liability that cannot be fully paid in a year without two-thirds voter approval. The Auditorium District complied with that requirement by proposing a one-year lease that may be renewed in future years in the sole discretion of the Auditorium District. This is known as a non-appropriation lease. It is commonly employed throughout Idaho by local governments to comply with the Constitution. Indeed, the very courthouse where all this litigation began, the Ada County Courthouse, was financed with such a non-appropriation lease. It was recently paid off early, saving the taxpayers a lot of money. Similarly good results are expected from the Auditorium District's non-appropriation lease. Most importantly, it puts the Auditorium District's money to work sooner, allowing everyone in the Treasure Valley to see and experience the benefit of drawing thousands of new visitors to Boise. That money is the money that is put to work, by the way, is not taxpayer money. The Auditorium District has no authority to tax property owners. All of those cranes and steel girders that you see behind me, not a nickel of that was paid for by property owners. Every dollar comes from the visitors to Boise. They pay a room tax at their hotels, and of course, they pay for the conventions. Local taxpayers pay nothing. The non-appropriation lease takes that money and puts it to work without delay. The result is more visitors sooner and more dollars going into cash registers of small businesses throughout the valley. That makes everyone better off. Let me conclude by emphasizing that the Auditorium District did nothing daring or cutting edge here. It played it by the book. It did exactly what the fiscally conservative framers of our Constitution demanded it do. It put the people's money to work in a way that places no burden and no risk on local taxpayers. This is a win for all. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Nick Miller from the Holly Troxel Law Firm. It's a pleasure to follow Chris on the podium because, as he related to you, he's the one who stood up in the Supreme Court and made the oral argument. I said it's a little bit like the ancient concept of a single warrior leading the combat for the entire team, as made famous by Horatius at the bridge in the 6th century BC at the gates of Rome. Because for a moment in time, somebody, the burdens of the great cause and the enterprise of a lot of people, for that moment in time, rests on the shoulders of one person. And that was Chris, who had the courage to take on the responsibility to make the oral argument, to present the argument that the rest of the legal team had constructed, and to see it through with his skill and advocacy. So we owe Chris a round of applause, if not our heartfelt thanks. Chris, thank you. On behalf of the Holly Troxel Firm, which has had the privilege of serving as bond counsel to the Auditorium District to figure out a financing for this facility for over 15 years, I want to congratulate the district on this result. It allows the financing to go forward. It allows the district to achieve their other significant goals. And as Jim pointed out, in a larger sense, it benefits other public agencies in the state of Idaho who really owe the district a debt of gratitude also. As a bond counsel law firm, my partner Mike Stoddard and our partner Danielle Quaid, we've said for years that we thought a year-to-year lease, if properly structured, would pass muster in the Supreme Court. But we never had an issuer or a case of somebody who was willing to take it to the Supreme Court and nobody else had been there with a case of similar issues that could be presented since, believe it or not, 1931. It's taken that long for somebody to say, yes, we will pursue this issue so we can get certainty. Because the dilemma that issuers were in is, we said it would work, but you don't know it until the Supreme Court decides. And now they have, because the district had the energy and the resolve to see the issue through and take it to the Supreme Court. So we're proud and we're happy and we're thrilled to have played our part. Next, you'll hear from Ryan Armbruster from the Capital City Development Corporation, which also played a key part in this financing. Ryan?
Good morning. My name is Ryan Armbruster. I'm a shareholder with the law firm of Elam & Burke. Thanks to the Auditorium District for allowing us the opportunity to participate in today's events, and great congratulations to Chris Meyer and the district at the outcome of the case released yesterday. Elam & Burke has had the privilege of representing the CCDC and its predecessor name, the Boise Redevelopment Agency, for over 3 decades. And over those 3 decades, there have been many monumental days and events. But certainly yesterday's events ranks right up there in the top of a positive result. We had the privilege of participating as attorneys for several friends of the court. We drew upon the experience and expertise, as well as Mike Moore, a renowned municipal attorney for many, many years. Capital City Development Corporation wholeheartedly supported the transaction between it and the district. CCDC believed it very important to advise the court of the importance of the issue before the court, not only for this particular transaction, but other transactions where public entities have entered and hopefully will enter into leases similar to the lease at issue. As mentioned by Chris, CCDC was proud to have been a part of the successful development of the Ada County Courthouse project under a lease very similar to the one between CCDC and the district. The courthouse project has solidified that project area and has been a monumental and great success. This project that we now undertake will also solidify convention activity and development and will be equally as successful. CCDC was fortunate to have several other entities join its cause, namely the Idaho School Boards Association, the Idaho Bankers Association, and the Boise Metro Chamber of Commerce. They chose to be involved because of the importance of the issue to their members and to economic development. We are very pleased with the decision, and we look forward to completing the transaction and moving on for other transactions as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris, Nick, and Ryan, and to the many organizations throughout the state who support our efforts in bringing this case to the Supreme Court. This is a victory not only for the district and the Boise Center, but for so many government agencies across the state who can use a non-appropriation lease as a tool to promote growth in a fiscally responsible way. The district is dedicated to promoting economic growth in the Boise area, and we look forward to completing the expansion of the Boise Center and to welcoming many visitors in the years to come. Thank you all for coming.